You know, they say in this episode that when you dye your your hair and your beard and your nails keep growing, right? And these are professional Starfleet officers who've done a course on biology. It doesn't. Your skin actually constricts and it makes it look like they've grown. They don't actually grow. I'm sorry. You are professional spacefaring people. Stop speaking shit. Shuttlepod 1 is arguably one of the best episodes of Season 1. Well, at least it was treated that way when it came out in the first season of Enterprise. I remember people talking about it, early days of the internet, reading the news, how this was a great two-parter. It's clearly a bottle episode. People really genuinely enjoyed the relationship between Malcolm and Trip, and they enjoyed the camaraderie and just the sort of simple nature of the story, which is essentially Trip and Malcolm were testing the shuttle's engines or something, and when they're returning, they come across an asteroid. They see some debris from Enterprise, and they think the Enterprise has been destroyed. They don't know what to do. Cut to the credits. The opening titles, Faith of the Heart. Go where my heart will take me. And we are introduced to the Enterprise actually not being destroyed. They rescued some people. They're taking them back to their planet. We don't see the people. We don't see the planet. This is a cheap episode. Malcolm and Trip are dealing with the death. They're a bit sort of, they're obviously sad. They're sort of talking about what they can do to survive. The overall feeling is that they're sort of a little bit like they're down, but they're not too down. The episode sort of progresses with, I want to say, and it's really kind of silly now. Malcolm's an English dude, so he's pessimistic and cynical.
Would you like some tea? Cigar?
Brandy?
And Trip is American, so he is all positive and thinks they'll be saved. Trip's working on the shuttle, trying to keep the communications going. He's trying to contact someone. They talk about what they're going to do. They talk about the crew of the Enterprise and sort of how young they were. They head out towards a subspace buoy, towards a star. Trip yells at Malcolm, telling him that he's a family of naval men. He should be able to use the stars to tell where he's going. Another silly thing they say in this episode, because why would Malcolm know the star formations of that area of space? He says he needs a Stetson, or the navigation tool that sailors used, which is a fun joke. It's interesting, and then he goes, "Oh, that blue star. Luckily, there's a big blue star. I think we passed that." So they sort of head into that direction. The two of them sort of deal with the loss in different ways. Trip's whole thing is working, focusing on the work. They've got 10 days of air as far as they know. Malcolm suddenly decides to talk about how they're going to die, and it sort of gets bad. He sort of starts recording messages to people, and Trip just wants him to shut the fuck up. And Trip wants to focus on getting them there. Malcolm's sort of like, I don't know what I can do to help. Trip's, hold the fucking flashlight, just do something. And the characters, between the two characters, it's really, really good. Now, Malcolm keeps recording these messages while Trip's sleeping, while Trip's trying to sleep. And Trip just goes, shut the fuck up, you've recorded he talks about, it's all the way through, he's recording messages to people he knows and his parents and 1,000,001 girlfriends he's met in San Francisco. And Malcolm's job is to be English and to be pessimistic. Trip is sort of trying to survive. Now, as they are traveling, the ship is hit by a spatial anomaly or a little mini black hole. We see on the Enterprise that a similar thing happened to the alien vessel they just saved. for some reason, Captain Archer is like, well, this is the Vulcan bogeyman. They always use these things as an excuse. And T'Pol's like, well, no, we believe in these things. It's a weird little sort of character thing between the two of them. They got to contact Trip and Tucker because they got to contact Trip and Tucker to tell them they're going to be a little bit late to the rendezvous. And that's sort of all we get. So the shuttle is punctured by these spatial things. They lose some air. They've only got about 2.5 days worth of air left. And so their choice is turn off the heating and they get 2.5 days, or leave the heating on and they get 2 days. They decide to turn off the heating. We get sort of a little bit of bickering still and a little bit of sort of silliness. We get a dream sequence from Malcolm, and I said it last episode and I'll say it again. Why do they need to sexualize T'Pol in every fucking episode? It's not every episode, but it's a lot. So in this dream, Malcolm dreams that he's saved, and then T'Pol talks about heroics, and then he says the word stinky, and then T'Pol smiles, and then they go close to kissing, and then all of a sudden, Malcolm wakes up and Trip goes, "Who's stinky? You were mentioning him a lot in the dream." And like Trip, I assumed that Malcolm was gay as well, but apparently not. He talks about a lot of women in this episode. He talks about T'Pol. It was just I don't know. I don't know why they feel the need to, anytime T'Pol can be used in a sexual way, they use her in a sexual way. The basics of the episode is they're sort of eating. They use mashed potato to seal the holes from those spatial flexures or whatever the hell they are, which seems weird. Then we see them sealing the holes with actual stuff. Trip and Malcolm are talking. Trip's talking about like Hoshi and Travis and how young they were. Malcolm's talking about it as well, and there's sort of genuine sort of feelings of remorse. They find some scotch, which was for Archer to give to someone. Why he left it in the shuttle, I don't know. I think it was an excuse for drunk acting. They start drinking, and they toast the Enterprise and how amazing she was. They end up talking about T'Pol's bum and how attractive she is, and I'm just sitting there going, why? Why do you need to talk about T'Pol's bum? I'm sorry, if you're dying in a shuttlecraft or you think you're going to die, are you going to talk about T'Pol's ass? If anyone in the comments says, yes, I would talk about T'Pol's ass, you are a bad person. The best thing about this episode is the character interactions between Trip and Malcolm. Trip and Malcolm, I think until this point, they sort of hinted at sort of getting along. This episode is sort of cements it. Like Malcolm talks about how he never really connected with his family and never really sort of put his girlfriends first. So he never built real relationships until he got to Enterprise, which is, I'm gathering, the cake episode where they find out he likes pineapple. So because they found out pineapple is his favorite food, Malcolm now thinks that they're his family, which is fine. It's one of those things, and I think this is also the first time they've really specified that Malcolm is straight, because I remember thinking at, I don't know how old I was when it first came out, like 16 or 17, Malcolm was gay. Like his mannerisms, the way he acted, very, very gay. Even Dominic Keating has said that he acted the character gay. This episode takes that off the table. We get a list of women he's shagged, him sexualizing T'Pol in a dream, and him talking about T'Pol in a sexual way to Trip. There's a really great scene sort of towards the end where they talk about sort of their feelings for each other, and he talks about how he's his friend. Then they sort of get a message from Hoshi. Well, they hear Hoshi and they realize that they're alive, they're excited, and they realize that although, yes, they will be rescued, it's going to be a little too late, and they need the Enterprise to speed up. So what do? They eject the impulse engines, which is a really cool shot, by the way. Like the whole chunk of the impulse engine comes off and floats into space, and then it explodes. And they wonder if that's a big enough blip on their sensor grid to get the Enterprise to go faster. And it's genuinely interesting. So the Enterprise they've got, I think it was a certain amount of hours, and Enterprise is going to arrive before that. And they're hoping that they're rushing, but they don't know. So they're at the back of the shuttle. They're drunk as nuts. Trip decides that if he kills himself, then Malcolm will survive. Malcolm pulls a phaser on and says, look, get the fuck down out of that airlock. We either get saved together or we die together. Which is, I think, really, really brave for Trip's character, shows that he's willing to sacrifice himself for his friend. Malcolm shows that he's loyal and doesn't want his friend to die, and he values that connection and that strength that they've developed in this shuttle pod. We cut to the end of the episode. It cuts to sort of them collapsing. The Enterprise obviously saves them. They're in sickbay. They talk about what went on and the fact that they were lucky they saw that giant blip. And then Malcolm talks to Paul and says, don't you have something to say to me about heroics? And she just looks at him like he's a fucking weirdo. Now, this whole, granted, I want to say this is a very good bottle episode, very good contained Shuttlepod episode. I think the acting by the two of them is pretty good. I don't think it's the strongest. I do think that they would panic more. I feel like if you were locked in a contained metal space, you would go fucking crazy thinking about yourself dying in this tin can. I think, like, as much as Trip's trying to be optimistic, I think that the middle ground is more where you would be, or at least you'd be like one of them freaking out. Like this would have, I think Hoshi would have been good to have here as well, because her fear of that space, it could be like a learning curve for her. And they do talk about Hoshi being sort of afraid in the beginning and growing, and she's saved their asses a few times. Don't know when she saved their asses a few times, but apparently she has. The crux of the episode is developing that bond between Trip and Malcolm, and it sort of holds up throughout the whole series. They're not an O'Brien and a Bashir, but there's certainly a good friend dynamic. I think playing on Malcolm's English, they do mention Superman in this, and Trip's obviously, we find out Trip's a fan of Superman. Malcolm's reading Ulysses, and he talks about how Europe would read books, and if Europe, and then sort of Trip goes, well, America invented the warp drive. I don't care. Actually, interestingly enough, they don't mention the United States of America. They mention North America. Like Malcolm says specifically, North Americans are. So maybe North America isn't around in the future. That'd be pleasant. I don't want to get too political. But it's a fun episode, which in modern viewing is a little bit sexist. Thank you, Rick Berman, for your gratuitous use of T'Pol as some sort of sex object and degrading her professionalism whenever you can. Once again, they cut out that dream. They don't need the sex part of that dream sequence, but T'Pol's there, so Rick Berman did it. Or someone in there made this choice. Let's make this sexy. Doesn't make it sexy. It makes your characters look creepy. Sort of like Geordie LaForge and his hologram engineer wife, of whom is a real person, technically. But yeah, what did you think about Star Trek Enterprise Shuttlepod 1? I think that actually, and another thing I want to bring up is the uniforms in this. The uniforms in Enterprise look fantastic, but I love the jacket and the cap. I think they look really, really good. I think Trip looks better with a beard. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you next week for another Star Trek Enterprise review.